Welcome, everyone, to the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research virtually. My name is Stephanie Halpern, and I am the director of the YIVO Archives. This panel today is part of YIVO's festival, Continuing Evolution, Yiddish Folksong Today, which celebrates Yiddish folksong through performances of traditional singing, performances of classical arrangements, and compositions based on Yiddish folksong, and through discussion of the resources available for studying Yiddish folksong. 3 of the festival's concerts have already happened and can be listened to on YIVO's YouTube channel. After this panel, there is one more concert happening this Thursday, May 26th, which we invite you to join us for in person or online. Today's program is a celebration of the digitization of a very important collection at YIVO. From 1973 to 1975, YIVO collected about 2,000 Yiddish folk songs and oral histories as part of its YIVO Folksong Project, East European Jewish Folksong in its social context. The project, directed by Barbara Kirshenblatt-Gimblett, created a one-of-a-kind audio resource, which includes recordings of Yiddish folk songs from genres which are rarely documented, insight into the songs traditional Eastern European Jewish singers sang, the range and variety of their repertoire, how they learned to sing, and also what singing meant to them on a personal and communal level. Thanks to a Recordings at Risk grant from the Council on Library and Information Resources, this collection has now been digitized, and the files are available online to users everywhere in the world for listening and download. We're very pleased to have a discussion about this project today, featuring the original project director, Barbara Kirshenblatt-Gimblett, ethnomusicologist Mark Slobin, singer and composer Joshua Waletzky, both of whom were also part of the original project, and YIVO sound archivist Eléonore Biezunski, who was instrumental in helping to get this collection online. The discussion today will be moderated by Mark Slobin. Thank you all very much for being part of this panel, and thank you to everyone in the audience for joining. Without further ado, Mark, I will hand over the virtual mic to you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to share this panel with 3 colleagues, not just the director, but the designer of the YIVO Yiddish Folksong Project, Barbara Kirshenblatt-Gimblett, Joshua Waletzky, another charter member of the project, and the current steward of the project, Eléonore Biezunski. I've been waiting nearly 50 years for this moment. When I first heard about the project back in the 1970s, I had just begun digging into the Yiddish song world that I grew up with. Barbara welcomed me into this new research world, actually took me into the YIVO building for the first time. It was a golden opportunity to be literally on the ground floor of a new, exciting and wholly original project. Let me explain just a little bit more, although Stephanie's already introduced the general idea. The Yiddish song corpus was and remains almost a lost continent of European traditional music studies. In 1914, Ansky's pioneering, if complicated and somewhat problematic, questionnaire ran aground on the realities of war and destruction. Then and later, collectors mostly remained just that, collectors, netting song specimens like butterflies and pinning them into songbooks. Even though the great Ruth Rubin expanded the anthology model into a book, she organized it just by genre and kept to her interpretation of what the song world of the singers had been, or might have been, rather than giving them voice beyond just the terrific recordings she made, all of which, by the way, are available at YIVO. Ruth Rubin's work and that of others gave a partial view of a vast panorama and left out almost everything about the way singers learned the songs, why they sang them, and how the songs fit into the daily life of communities. Barbara aimed to widen the lens and largely succeeded with the sample of singers she was able to gather with a small staff and big research dreams. The timing was urgent. The older generation was about to pass on who could sketch out the landscape of lived expressive culture. I was lucky enough to work with Barbara on the song world of one exceptional singer from her childhood circle, Mariam Nierenberg, that she's going to talk about. Together, we produced the first monograph record album that surveyed biography, context, and analysis of the songs that this gifted singer had picked up in various locations and circumstances in a number of languages. While Mrs. Nierenberg was firmly rooted in community life, hers was not a timeless so-called shtetl world, but rather a constantly shifting site of song learning and performance across geography, generational taste, and genre, including both Jewish and non-Jewish sources. When we finally have the full digitization of the questionnaires, not just the songs, and we have transcripts of all the interviews, we will have a new view of the Yiddish song as recalled and performed by what we tend to call, quote, traditional singers. That tradition is one of open ears, active learning, and personalizing rather than the static experience of what used to be called tradition bearers, as though culture were a burden to be mutely carried. I look forward to future collaborations with both veteran researchers and the many young, dedicated enthusiasts that are enriching the study of the Yiddish folk song today. All of us owe a debt of gratitude to Barbara, who will now narrate her own vision and her pathway into the project. But just before she does, I just want to frame her insight as a pioneer of scholarship. In the rising disciplines of folklore and ethnomusicology in the 1970s, she was among the very first to write a dissertation based on her own insider knowledge of a tradition, which helped me to follow that idea. Her doctorate maybe was the first in America to be based on Yiddish expressive culture studies. She taught in the major programs in folklore and then helped to invent performance studies, which was a really important step to acknowledge the makers of the cultures. This opening moved out into projects like Joshua Waletzky's groundbreaking film, Image Before My Eyes, which took a museum exhibition prepared by Barbara and Lucian Dobrositsky into new media unfamiliar to YIVO's older European kinds of methodologies. It then became natural to carry this work into other areas like the newly emerging klezmer scene. The stone that Barbara dropped into the still pond of Yiddish folkloristics continues to ripple today in the many new projects unfolding in our times, for which we are all deeply grateful. So we turn it to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was a wonderful introduction, and I have to say that one of the great pleasures, one of the great joys of my career has been to collaborate with Mark and with Josh, and more recently with Eléonore on bringing this collection to a wider public. So what I'd like to do is to share with you how I came to this project and what the project itself actually looks like. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Yeah. Up. So the story really, I think the story really begins in 1967 when I discovered the treasure trove of folklore and folk song in my own family. And it really was a kind of jaw-dropping discovery. I had absolutely no idea until in my first semester in the PhD program in 1967 at Indiana University in the Folklore Institute, my very, very first, I would say, foray was for a fieldwork course. And when Professor, Jerry Mintz, realized that I knew Yiddish, he encouraged me to do a fieldwork project. And so I began by interviewing my family. And it was quite by chance, my mother's older sister was hosting a dinner at her place. And we were there with Mariam Nierenberg, a cousin of my mother, who's from Palesia. And she was a little bit older than my mom. My mom was born in 1915. And I had, it was a dinner, we sat around the table, and after we had finished eating, basically Sylvia said, "Mariam, zing." So I had no idea what to expect. Mariam started to sing, and I just about fell off my chair. This was a bona fide traditional singer no formal training, with a wonderful, bright singing style and an incredible repertoire. And so I began recording her songs, and as Mark described, together we put together this monographic album of her repertoire. And this would have this was sometime after we had completed the Yiddish Folksong Project, but the recordings are online, the liner notes are online. But let me just share with you the eulogy that I read at her funeral. Mariam was a jewel in our family, a rare treasure. I'll never forget the first time I realized that she carried within her the living Yiddish folk song tradition. It was in 1967 at the Royal York Hotel. My mother's sister, Sylvia, may she rest in peace, had her showroom there. She was a manufacturer's representative of women's lingerie. We were all invited to dinner. We sat around the table, and afterwards, Sylvia begged Mariam to sing. She loved Mariam's songs, and my mother did too. Mariam began to sing, and I was shocked. There in my midst, in my very own family, the Yiddish folk song was alive in Mariam. Songs from the oldest strata of the repertoire, centuries old, that she remembered from her little town of Valencia. Songs of love, songs of war, songs to delight children, songs of longing for youth. She sang songs for all occasions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, parties. What would be a simcha in our family without Mariam and her songs? She gave us a gift that no one else could give us. She carried them from Europe to America. She kept them alive for us. I listened then, I could hardly believe my ears. There in my own family was a dream come true. And so that was really the beginning. And I would say that she, of course, what I discovered when I interviewed her was that she knew a lot more than just Yiddish folk songs, but we'll come to that in just a moment. So she was the first, I would say she was the first singer that I recorded the complete repertoire and in depth. But the second was Lifshe Schechter Widman. And this, of course, is Yitzhak Gottesman's grandmother. And Yitzhak's uncle, Mordechai Schechter, when I came to YIVO in 1967, Mordechai Schechter said, you know, you must record my mother. You must record Lifshe. And she was from the Book of Ina. Now, Lifshe was amazing. She had a repertoire of over 200 songs. I mean, Yitzhak can correct me. I seem to have a recollection that it was in the neighborhood of 250 songs, and a completely different singing style. You know, you could hear a kind of Belarusian, very bright a singing style from Mariam, and from Lifshe, it was a rather soft, warm, a completely different style, and a marvelous repertoire. So she was the second one, the second singer that I was able to record in depth. And so those were really, I would say, this was in the 1960s, the late 60s, the early 70s, but really the late 60s. These were the beginnings of the project. Basically, the Yiddish Folksong Project went from January 1973 to September 1975. And it was entitled East European Jewish Folk Songs in its Social Context, an analysis of the social systemization of folk song performance. And we were able to win the National Endowment for the Humanities grant for this purpose. So I want to share with you the way in which I basically framed the project. This study provides information on and analyzes Yiddish folk song performance in its social context on the basis of field data never before gathered. In the past, the study of expressive behavior generally, and Yiddish songs in particular, has been text and tune-oriented, very much as Mark described, and has emphasized the origin, distribution, and history of particular songs. In other words, as you would expect, the study of Yiddish folk song was about the songs. In contrast, this study generates the data necessary for integrating song with the other components involved in its use: participants, settings, linguistic and musical codes, performance styles, norms of interaction and interpretation, standards of excellence and reveals the social systematization of Yiddish song performance in its multicultural and ethnographic context. So the idea here was to shift the focus from the song to the singer. That was the first extremely important move. And that once we did that, and we shifted from the song text and the song tune to performance, we were in a completely different ballgame. So those were the first principles, from the song to the singer, and from the text and the tune to the performance. That was really the first move. The second idea was, and this is extremely important, was that East European, and I say this advisedly, East European traditional song and music are particularly productive for this study because Jews formed an ethnic minority that was distributed continuously over a vast and culturally diverse geographic territory. Therefore, the singers were in contact with the traditions of a variety of co-territorial populations and incorporated into their repertoire whole songs and other aspects of the musical systems of their neighbors, who in turn were influenced by Jewish singers and musicians. So, in other words, the East European Jewish singer presents very rich opportunities for studying inter-ethnic musical interaction over a large and diverse territory and repercussions of this contact on the musical system of one widely distributed ethnic minority. Now, for that reason, my decision that we would record everything the singer sang and not only what was sung in the Yiddish language. If they sang in Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, German, English, whatever language they sang, we would record the entire repertoire. And that is really, I would say, the third principle. Now, the project itself, it involved a lot more than simply recording singers. It involved training research assistants, a whole series of graduate seminars, a survey of the scholarship, the developing of tools, of questionnaires, of protocols for transcription, musical transcriptions, transcription of language. And I would say, and the result. So let me just say a word about the result, and then I want to conclude by saying a word about the questionnaires, because they really, I think, are the DNA of the whole project. So what resulted from this project? The collection includes 240 hours of tape recordings of 75 singers, 3 hours of videotape, 3,000 pages of transcription Yiddish into Yiddish, that is from interviews that were conducted in Yiddish, 2,000 recorded and documented songs, in-depth interviewing of 13 singers, photographs and other memorabilia from the singers. We were able to index 184 hours of tape and to transcribe 92 hours. And we have all of the finding tools, indices and finding tools, and of course, we have the questionnaires. Now, the main questionnaire was how to document a song and its performance. Now, this is for one song. There were 23 questions. I know it sounds a bit excessive, but there was no other way to do this. But let me give you a little bit of and incidentally, Mark has been instrumental in creating the YiddishFolksong.org website, where the questionnaire is there, the final report is there, and I encourage you to visit that website. So, we do things like, obviously, the date, the name of the singer, the name of the interviewer, how was the song elicited? Did the singer spontaneously present the song? Was there a prompt? Was it with a line or a stanza? The titles of the song according to the singer. Was it the first line of the song? Was it a title given by the interviewer? Asking the singer if she added or changed anything. For example, Lifsha Vidman knew wonderful love songs that were extremely sad, tragic, I don't know, a woman that got pregnant before she was married and she put her baby into the river, and the final stanza was so sad that Lipsha wouldn't sing it. So only by interviewing her would I know that there was a final stanza that she wasn't singing. When did you hear this song? Do you remember the year, the place, the occasion? Who was there? Who sang the song? What was their relationship to you, etc.? Did you begin to sing the song immediately or later? Questions like, was it popular? Do you know other tunes to these words? What kind of a song is this? How does the song make you feel? What feelings do the words or melody call forth? Do you like this song better than other songs? Is it one of your favorites? Do you think that the melody is a Jewish one? Can you explain? Did the events in the song actually happen? Because there are songs about World War I, for example. Does the song remind you of particular moments in your own life? Are you aware of a source for the song? And also observations on the part of the interviewer. Did the singer sit or stand? Is anybody else present, etc.? So these were 23 questions. Now, in addition to the song documentation form, there were also personal history forms that were intended to gather a kind of musical, well, a basic biography of the singer, but there was also a detailed guide to the musical biography of the singer. In other words, aspects of the biography that had special reference to the learning, use, and meaningfulness of song and singing in the singer's life and the musical milieu in which the singer developed. There was also a special guide to the use of music in early childhood and a guide to the description of performance occasions for each major holiday. And we attempted to interview singers about these holidays at the time that they actually occurred in the year. So we had major guides prepared for the Sabbath, Passover, Purim, and some of the minor festivals. There were also guides designed specifically for exploring taboos governing singing and singing of women in the presence of men, and one that were intended to elicit songs and information on singing associated with occupations. And finally, participant observation guides. So this was, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm hoping it'll work. Okay. I probably can't because of this unfortunate situation that I'm in. Okay. Okay, just a second. Oh, this should work. Okay. But in any event, this is basically an outline of the project, and I would say that it's very gratifying, the concert yesterday, to hear a whole new generation of singers actually drawing from the archive and already singing these songs. And I think it's wonderful that they are freely and openly available to researchers, to singers, to students, to teachers, to whoever would like to work with this material. So with that, I will give it back to Mark.
Thank you, Barbara. That really helpful survey give a sense of the extraordinary depth of thinking that you put into making a really comprehensive approach to the song and the singers. So contrastive with any other project that's ever been done on this material. I just wish that other people in European, scholarly traditions knew about this. Our problem is always these things stay kind of a little bit too much in-house. And I think we have to find ways to reach out and let people who do, in other scholarly worlds get the benefit of this as well, because it's pioneering in many ways. We're going to turn now to Joshua Waletzky. Josh, I think was mentioned as a singer and a teacher, but Josh is a filmmaker and somebody who has, worked in Hollywood and done really serious professional kinds of work in the area of sound and music that he was able to bring to all his projects. Today, we're particularly grateful for him for the incredible new variety of Yiddish songs that he is producing and disseminating. And the question is, are they folk songs? Is he a folk singer? These are interesting questions for someone who grew up really deeply embedded in the Yiddish song world. So I'll turn it over to Josh for some thoughts.
Thank you, Mark, for that introduction. I feel tickled to be identified with Hollywood, but actually, I'm going to share a clip from one of the films that I made that was deeply connected to the YIVO Yiddish Folksong Project in a couple of minutes. Which does have a Hollywood connection, so I will will make good on your description. As Mark just said, I grew up deeply embedded in the Yiddish folk song world, or the Yiddish song world, and when I first became aware of the YIVO Folksong Project and became acquainted with Breindl, as I knew her and know her now, Barbara. I was stunned, amazed, and very gratified that my music world, so to speak, was being lavished all of this scholarly attention. And I would say, in answer to Mark's question of whether the songs that I write and continue to write are folk songs or not, I've always felt that they are, in the sense that they're no different in origin than lots of songs which are included in our repertoire, in the repertoire of the singers that some of the 75 singers in the YIVO Yiddish Folksong Project, which were songs written by, let's say, Warshawski or Gebirte, known composers or songwriters, but which then took on a life of their own as they traveled through the ecosystem of the Yiddish folksong world, or song world. And yeah, so that's where I place my own work as a songwriter in that kind of tradition. And I would say especially the connection between Yiddish theater and Yiddish song, Yiddish folk song, has always been a particularly vibrant connection. One of the examples I think of there is a song, I don't believe it's in the recording, that's in the YIVO Folksong Project collection, because there are two recordings that I made, which I gave into the collection, even though I was kind of an informal member of the seminar. I don't think I was ever officially registered, but on two occasions I had, with my own tape recorder, recorded after the Shabbos meal or after the Pesach Seder, the singing, which always occurred, as in so many families. And the song that I have in mind was one that my mother's father, my grandfather, sang. Abe mile haben unsere Aves avosenu, a song about well, the ancient tree of Jewish tradition and how it will bloom again. And I much later learned that this was actually a song from a Goldfaden operetta. And with Miriam Chaya Siegel's help, I located sheet music for that song. And I would say it was practically unrecognizable from the way my grandfather sang it, and far more interesting in his version than to look at the sheet music. And I say that because, one of the topics that we're talking about today is how will this collection live on in the world now? How will we make use of it? And I think there are two principles. There are singers who will draw on it for repertoire. And then there are students and scholars who will make use of it to study the collection and in various directions. And I think that in the first category, singers who want to perform material, whether informally in their own families or on the stage or microphone. I'd like to quote something that Sarah Gordon said at yesterday's concert, which is actually she was quoting something that Masha Roski said while she was being interviewed, that a song is like a page of a diary. And I think this is one nice encapsulation of what Brindle was saying before about the putting the singer back into the picture as the focus rather than the song, the performance and the meaning for the singer. I think that in the Ruth Rubin way of categorizing things, I use her as a straw person, but in the more traditional way of, let's say, a lullaby is a song that we categorize by text and by its text. But in fact, in life, especially when a child is too young to understand language, any song serves as a lullaby. And this was something which I brought out of the concert yesterday, that song that is about a coachman, Vio Ferdalach, and would never be considered a lullaby, actually was the first lullaby that my father heard in his life. And I think that one of the ways that we should consider even categorizing and creating finding aids for this this treasure of a collection now digitized is by the categories of the questionnaire, when and how the song was learned, rather than looking at the text and using that as our key. And I love the way that Sarah Gordon expressed this yesterday, because she said that she felt like she got to know Masha Roski's a little bit through that song. And it's the function of this particular kind of expressive culture to create these bonds, these connections, interpersonal connections. And I think that in families where this kind of singing was common, such as my own family and Mark's family and Brindle's family, it's not only the song specialists that we treasure so much. I mean, like Mariam Nierenberg, who was an amazing, wonderful singer, but everyone at the table sang. Everyone, even the ones who couldn't sing. And I think of my mother, for example, who growing up in the Volksschule, in the Yiddish cultural schools, that had choruses was always told by the choral conductor, mouth the words, because she would sing off key. And yet she had a song, and her song was Donna Donna, a very popular theater song, Shalom Sekunda. And I remember how she sang the song, and it was completely off key. It would never be considered interesting by anyone who didn't know her. But if you knew her, it takes on a very intimate and strong value. And I guess I've told this story before, but on her gravestone, I chose an inscription from the song, Vers hat Fliegel, whoever has wings, because her entire artistic output was all about birds and the freedom that they symbolize. And I'm sure that was the connection in that song that made that happen for her. Anyway, I would like now, Julia, if you could please play the excerpt from Image Before My Eyes, which I think is, okay, let's just go.
We went to the Yiddish theater. We came home. We had a taste of everything. Everyone knew a little bit, and we sang. A poor girl would come on the stage, barefooted, wrapped in a shawl, and a little basket on the hand. This was in the Yiddish theater that I saw. On the street Karova 18 in Warsaw. Yeah. This was the play. So this actress would sing, come in and sing and say, Oy der Joltes mich mekana. Oy der Joltes mich mekana. Oy der Joltes mich mekana mit mein klein Stückle Brot. Der Joltes mich mekana mit mein klein Stückle Brot. Will von gut nicht wissen, die Käschen ist mir zu rissen. In dem Borbes nacket heißt mir gein, oi gein. Oi in Dreußen geht der Regen, oi in Dreußen geht der Regen. In Dreußen geht der Regen mit der klein bisschen Schnee. Der Jolt will gut nicht wissen, die Skihaller sind mir zerrissen. In Borbes nacket heißt mir gein, oh gein. Der Jolt ist mich mekane, in der Jolt ist mich mekane. Der Jolt ist mich mekane mit mein klein Stückle Brot. Will von gut nicht wissen, die Käschen ist mir zerrissen. In Ausgein will ich berühmt in der Neu, heute neu.
A large audience.
Okay. So that little clip from Image Before My Eyes, I think, is a rare example of, in fact, a documentation of the process of collecting songs from the YIVO Yiddish Folksong Project. And we can get the feeling of the intimacy between the interviewer and the informant. We're sitting in the kitchen, there's cake on the table. There's a strong personal connection in the way that the song is being sung. And the anecdote I want to tell about this particular sequence is the following. In 1980, when Image Before My Eyes was in the final stage of being edited, Barbara Streisand happened to be in pre-production, preparing to film Yentl, based on an Isaac Bashevis Singer story. So Barbara Streisand, and this is the Hollywood connection, came into YIVO and started to try to do some research. And one of the people that she spoke to was Lucien Dobrashitsky. And Barbara Streisand was told, oh, well, you know, we have a young man working on a film about this world. You should, you know, you should get in touch and see if you could be helpful. So long story short, Barbara Streisand came down to our little editing setup off Union Square. We had borrowed a corner of an architect's office who happened to be a friend of one of the production people, and sat through at a flatbed editing system the cut of Image Before My Eyes. When we came to the sequence that you just saw, and Lillian Klumpner finished singing, Barbara Streisand stopped the screening and she said, "Who is that?" I didn't know exactly how to answer that. She was clearly stunned by the performance. And I said, "Oh, that's Mrs. Lillian Klumpner. She's a homemaker who lives in Brooklyn." And then Barbara Streisand said, she sings so naturally. And it was, you know, I will never forget the way her jaw dropped at this performance that we just witnessed. It kind of solidified in my own thinking the idea that a song performed in this very intimate family style of singing over a kitchen table has as much artistic, cultural value as Barbara Streisand, who was certainly at the time the most famous singer on the face of the world, you know, and a consummate artist, without doubt. So I think, you know, that there are some performers who about whom we say, when they sing, everyone in the audience feels like they're being sung to individually, like they make that personal connection. And I think that's something that this style of singing almost always has. And it gives it a value which is extraordinarily rich. But again, to go back to what Breindl said in her remarks, it doesn't have that value if we simply, or as Mark put it, we simply pluck it out of its context and pin it to the board, you know, like a butterfly. So when we mine this connection, this collection, we have to take the whole rock with the vein of gold inside of it. We can't just like try to somehow extract the gold, because the gold is in the rock as much as the gold.
Thanks, Josh. That's really a wonderful way of putting it. Yeah, your work in making that into new media, you know, as you did also in Partisans of Vilna, it really, you know, shows how impressive songs can be in terms of, educationally as well as emotionally. And that's another value of this project, I think. I think we have to, for time reasons, turn to Eléonore, who is now permanently engaged as a curator at the YIVO in the Max and Frida Weinstein Sound Archives, and who is responsible for the presentation and the public-facing nature of the collection today. Thanks. Eléonore.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to present this collection with you all today, and thank you to Alex for putting together the whole festival, Alex Weiser. I work as a sound archivist in the YIVO Sound Archive. I want to apologize in advance. My internet is very spotty, so if I hope it will be smooth, but there may be some glitches. And I'm gonna try to speak slowly in case that happens. So I'm just gonna show the actual digital archive now. It's maybe the driest presentation of the three, which were so personal and embodied. This is the driest part. It's the dry archive, but inside it is all this life. So I hope you will find your way in, and that's the reason why I want to show it now. So here is my screen. Jane, if you can just click to the view online button, and just to give a sense of how this looks like. So on the right up, there is a button to share and a button to download the recording. So these recordings are all downloadable. So just click on the player to listen.
Ja, no, kaufen, das sind sich kommen kaufen, das alles. Und sie können sich Häuser mit Jägeres verkaufen und so weiter. Aber Jägeres und die alle Sachen mit nicht verkaufen. So da gab es speziellen Platz, und dort sind sie gesessen. Und so ich auch zwischen sich. Nein.
Here you can hear the beginning of an interview. We're not going to listen to this more right now because I would like to listen to some music. So we can, this player opens in a different tab, and so the description of what's on the tape will be on the main page of the archive, just as we saw just before. So Jane, I just sent you another link if you would like could share that. So just to listen to a few excerpts. So yesterday we performed songs from the collection at Jalopy, and Lawrence Klumberg, who works with me in the YIVO Sound Archive, prepared this playlist of the source recordings from the songs we performed yesterday, and just this is easier to share today, so I would like to play for you the number 14, Kum Taher zu Feigaler. It's a children's song that was recorded from Tivie Serlin and Esther Rosowski, two sisters probably. So yes, please.
Taher zu Feigaler, kosher Iregeler. Eine mit der weißen Beichel, mit der Kelechel am Meichel, mit der Schnabel, die nun spitzig, ruft es Hilchig, itzig, itzig, hip, 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 zip, 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 Feigele, Feigele, hab Beichlied, hip, 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 zip, 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 Feigele, Feigele, hab Beichlied. Moet dat weer de melodie?
Dat is van Schule.
Van Schule. Echt, van klas 1, 2.
Aha.
So you can hear them explaining to Michael Stanislavski that they learned this from school. So this is very sweet, and I want to insist in the folklore, it's very important. And so the memories that people had of what they learned as children is also recorded in the collection, and it's very important, I think, to listen to that. Jane, can you stay on this page? I wanted to maybe listen to another couple of songs. So I was thinking Feigeler Schenke. We're staying in the world of birds, but
Feigalach Schenke, Feigalach Kleininke, singt nicht, mein Herz ist betriebt. Punkt See, fleckt mir singen meine Kleininke, die welche ich hab geliebt. Sternlach Kleininke, Sternlach Lichtike, scheint nicht, mein Herz ist verzogen. Punkt See, fleckt mir sie, Punkt See, ne zwei lichtige Egerlach, hat mein Geliebtes vermogt. Welach lach Kleininke, welach lach Lustige, euch nicht, mein Herz ist verklogt. Punkt so, fleckt mir schätzen mein Mäderle, die welche ich hab geliebt.
Thank you. So so this was Anna Berkowitz. She was also recorded by Ruth Rubin. So she appears in both collections, and that be able to hear certain performers in both collections, or in formats in both collections, because in this Folksong Project, you can hear them also really talk about the songs and how they learn them, which is not the case in the. Sometimes other songs are not in both, so it's also good to have a sense of someone's repertoire, which was also the goal of this the entirety of the informant's repertoire. So I would like also to listen to sorry, which one was it? Yiddish Sternler that Sarah Gordon performed yesterday. This one was recorded by Masha Roskis, and it's a Bundist song.
Ihr seht, wie die Sternlach läschen sich einzig weiß, es wird nicht gedauern länger die Nacht. Ihr seht, wie der Himmel wird heller und lichtiger, als auf solche nehmen die finstere Nacht. Brüder in Kampf, was ist schwer, na 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 na, na 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 na, mit Kraft und mit Macht die Freiheit erwacht, als auf solche nehmen die finstere Nacht. Ihr seht, wie es gehen viel Hunderter, Tausender Arbeiter, Helden, gewesene Knecht. Ihr seht, wie sie tragen die Räte vorne, sie gehen von Völker freien die Welt. Brüder in Kampf, was ist schwer, na 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 na, na 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 na, mit Kraft und mit Macht die Freiheit erwacht, als auf solche nehmen die finstere Nacht.
Thank you. So I'm going to post in the chat so that people can access all these recordings. I encourage you to, whenever it's going to be available really soon, to listen to the recording of yesterday's program, which featured all these songs by today's performers, and come if you can on Thursday night or online if you can't come. Thank you. Here is the link. And of course, you can reach out to us at the YIVO Sound Archive if you have any question about this. And if you are interested in contributing to helping us making the paper available, we can use a little bit of help on this. So reference at yivo.org would be the email to write to if you want to, for example, volunteer some time to help us scan this. And thank you.
Thank you, Eléonore. That's great to hear the living voices. They're just so full of pathos and emotion, and they're so beautifully projected of the lyrics. We have just a couple questions that to answer. One technical thing. Is Image Before Our Eyes available, Josh? Do you know where it can be seen these days?
I wish I did.
Yeah, it's not clear.
The distributor, Dr. Rama, I don't believe has it currently available. So I have to take it up with the YIVO.
Yeah, that's a problem because that's a major. That's a very major film, and it needs to be available. It used to be on YouTube, but I guess not anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if someone has an inquiry about that, maybe address it to me.
Okay. Michael Lucan, who was one of our today's most important specialists on the Yiddish song, was asking, and maybe it's mostly for Barbara, which answers to the questionnaire were most surprising? Of course, that's a rather large question, but there were so many surprises there.
Wow. Well, actually, I actually was surprised, and I don't remember how I found out. Alicia said that she stopped singing before the last stanza because the last stanza was so sad.
Yeah.
Because I guess, we know from English and Scottish popular ballads that, there's murder and, I don't know about incest, there's murder and there's, a child out of wedlock and unrequited love and etc. And I had just never run across it. But what it meant is that the emotional power of the song was so strong that it was overwhelming to the point where she couldn't bring herself to sing the last stanza.
Yeah.
I found that really, that was a revelation to me. And also because the singing style is very contained. It's not histrionic, it's not emotional, it's not dramatic, it's not operatic. It's the power that comes from the very strong emotional content and the very restrained approach to singing, so that by not dramatizing and concertizing and otherwise elaborating the performance, the song really comes through. And incidentally, Mrs. Klempner is the best. Oh my God, she is just the best. But in her case, she was singing a theater song, and honestly, her version was better than the theater version.
Yes, absolutely.
It was a theater song, so it had, her sense of performing it rather than just singing it. So that was very interesting.
Well, it's all context. My father-in-law sang that song, who grew up in Warsaw in the 30s, and he remembered it was the underworld, right? And he remembered that there was a live song. I mean, they were talking about, people don't understand, what it's like to be a thief. But he still heard it in a kind of live context then, whether it come out of the stage or not.
Right. Because that's interesting too, is that she, the role of theater and the way in which, also the way she said that it was like they divided up the task of remembering the songs so that pardon me, they could reconstitute it when they got into the theater, and in a sense, then have the whole thing. I mean, that's just fabulous.
Yeah. Let me add something about Mrs. Klempner, because it occurs to me that in a way, the song world that we're talking about is as much a listener's medium as a singer's medium. Every time Mrs. Klempner would sing a song, she was remembering how she enjoyed hearing it, not how she enjoyed singing it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, but there's another question here about whether the restrained style is a function of the lower register, which I don't think it is, and the singers who sang in higher pitch. No, Biezunski talks about different kinds of singers, and one of the few remarks that the great collector Biezunski ever makes about the way people perform these songs. He says, well, there are those who sing it in a very dramatic kind of style, and there are those who sing it in a very straightforward style. And if I recall right, and Josh, maybe you can correct me, I think he said the ones who sang it more dramatically were the city people who had learned them versus the folk singers who sang it in a more restrained style. That idea of restrained style particularly for narrative songs is right across Europe. It's one of the actual definitions of what a ballad is that you sing it with no expression. I remember reading about a collector in England who said, or Scotland, that he was doing a similar kind of recording, and it was this horrible song of treachery and murder, and the singer just sang it absolutely, completely controlled, and at the end he said, "The bastard."
Yeah, but
it's true in the USA also. The American traditional song Appalachia, they sing it and they sit upright and they sing it straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you're putting a mask on. The mask of the tradition is a kind of a mask you're putting. You're not yourself in that sense.
Yeah. Well, but also let's remember a ballad. You're telling a story.
Right.
It's not like a lyric where you're saying,
right.
You're just telling in the third person.
Yeah, so narrative songs are different than what we tend to call lyrical songs. But it's also personality. You just really, in this huge range of people singing in all these collections we have now, you can just hear the different personalities.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I don't see any at the moment, so. Maybe.
Yes, there was one. And that is, did I find the same song, several singers? Okay, so you have to realize that one of the great treasures is collecting versions and variants of a song. So, and that means getting the same singer to sing the same song over and over again. That's always, it's a research, I would say, the research value of repeated singing, repeated performances. You learn a lot, and especially if they're singing in different contexts, you learn a lot. And then the other is versions and variants, which is wonderful. And if we were able to collect them over a really wide territory, there are ways of working with them that can be extremely helpful in understanding the history of the songs. So yeah, absolutely, versions and variants, that's our bread and butter.
If I remember correctly, Brindle, you put together a tape of 6 different versions of Schwarze Karlschalach.
It could very well be, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was extremely instructive.
Oh yeah. Variation.
Yeah.
Well, we need this eventually on the site where you can type in any song and you'll get all the versions of it and you'll know where to find them. That's the kind of thing that digitization is supposed to do for you, but it costs time and money. So eventually that should be part of it, the way the Klezmer Institute is trying to become an umbrella for any klezmer related item. You'll be able to type it in and you'll get recordings and books that it's in and live performance and whatever. That's one of the goals of the Klezmer Institute. There should be a similar kind of concordance sort of approach to all of Yiddish song, and YIVO having Reuben Stonehill and this project, could do that. It's just a matter of, getting the support for it, which is not immediately, obviously, forthcoming.
Mark, let me elaborate a little bit, because one very unique and valuable aspect of this collection is that we have recorded speech in good quantity from each of the singers. And for example, scholars who would like to study the connection between the Yiddish folk song style, singing style, and Yiddish spoken language, and intonation studies.
Well, that's a good point. Linguistically,
Linguistically, there's a tremendous resource here that doesn't exist elsewhere.
Well, we were very fortunate. I mean, Ruth Rubin had a recorder, and there are recordings. Of course, Biezunski recorded. The recordings, I mean, the idea of studying performance as such, it goes way beyond restrained style, dramatic style. There's so much more. There's so much more to it, and some of it is absolutely personal to the singer, but much of it, I would say, is linked to genre. It's linked to region. It's linked maybe to generation in terms of the singers. So the idea that performance style can be studied, of course, you need recordings for that. And we've had recordings for a very long time, but those recordings were considered in a way as better than writing. What did Yud Lamed Khan do, the great Yiddish folk singer? He learned the song and he sang it to a cantor who wrote it down because he couldn't notate it himself. So he was the recording machine. Essentially, he treated himself as the recorder. Well, that is, that I guess is a kind of solution. But I think that I know that Ethel Brame is very interested, and I really want to mention Ethel and the Balkan Arts Center, and then more recently the Center for Traditional Music and Dance. They were really, and Ethel especially, and Marty Koenig were really, really important when we were working on the Yiddish Folksong Project and in the years that followed, because they were the first to actually put these singers on the stage and actually expose them live to a public, so that they were not the raw material for the collector who wants to perform. And much as I love Ruth Rubin, and I think her collection is amazing, and she's an absolute pioneer, but basically, ultimately, she performed songs, and even on recordings, even on the Folkways documentary field recordings, LPs, she is herself there as well as a singer, not identified as such, but she's actually there as one of the singers. So it's a very different relationship to the material. And but anyways, I wanted to acknowledge Ethel and Marty because I think they were really very, very important in the project as well.
Let me just jump in and add a point about this, which is I found very interesting. Speaking with some of the other singers yesterday at the concert, it turns out that the Zoom world that we've entered during the pandemic has been, in a way, a boon for this singing style, because when one is performing these songs on stage in a concert, whether consciously or not, one tends to project in a different way, just I'm speaking of vocal technique, than these songs were ever sung in context. Because around the Shabbos Tish or in the car traveling, you didn't need to project, and one doesn't project, and therefore the vocal production, as we learned from Sasha Luria when we spoke with her about this, a little song study circle, is much closer to speaking projection. Rather than a theatrical. And in fact, some of the singers yesterday were commenting that during the Zoom era, their performance of this material, but even other material, improved, because on Zoom, you can give a much more intimate performance of these songs, which is the way that they live. So I think of Yid Lamed Khan, actually, even though inadequate in many ways, that's actually the way the songs are preserved in the song ecosystem. You hear them and then you sing them. That's the recording device which makes this song world live. So, but it's interesting about Zoom. It really has had an unexpected impact.
It is certainly giving a new kind of life to the traditional materials, both vocal and instrumental, and the discussions like this one, which we could never have done otherwise. You can have people in 8 countries around the world, or people watching this from everywhere.
Okay, Mark, if I might just intervene. Those who are asking about Image Before My Eyes, you can buy the DVD on eBay. I just found it.
Okay.
There are several of them. I'm going to put it. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Second, put it in the chat. Right.
That's you can play a DVD.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you can. I mean, you can buy a DVD player.
DVD player.
It's a Gottesman points out that one of the singers in the project, Ethel Berman, also sang for Yud Lamed Khan. So we got a lot more out of her. Someone wants to know if there was an organization at Hebrew University doing this kind of work. I don't think so.
Oh, actually, no. Hang on a second. So first of all, we have to acknowledge Mayor Noy.
Oh, that, yeah.
My brother, who was an absolutely passionate, obsessive Yiddish folk song collector. And of course, as I recall, he wasn't recording them. I don't.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't recording them, but he was.
That was not the point of his. Yeah.
Right, he was collecting them. But there is the Phonoteca at the
Hebrew University and National Library. That's a really good, enormous collections of Jewish song of Jewish music of all kinds, and there's a lot of Yiddish songs there. I don't know the extent to which they've made that, but I don't think they come with interviews.
No, I don't think there's a parallel.
No. This is a unique case. Really, unique.
I mean, it is indeed.
Well, okay, we've probably been going on long enough. Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to YIVO and for hosting this project after all this time, and making it, beginning to make it available. We look forward to the full kind of presentation of this, and the cross-referencing and all the kinds of ways that this can be made more, user-friendly over time as resources become available. And again, thanks to Alex Weiser for organizing this extraordinary set of 5 events celebrating the Yiddish song. So I guess that's it. I'll turn it back to Stephanie or Jane.
Yeah, thank you very much, all of our esteemed panelists. We appreciate all of you, and for everyone who's joining us live and anyone who watches this recording later, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, visit our website, yivo.org, for more information, to get connected to the collection, for questions to our archivists. We hope that you embark in your own research.